Welcome back, combatants, to the Combat Chess channel, and in today's video we're going to go over 3 common trap openings that new players fall into. Let's go! Alright, so we're talking about the 3 traps that cause black players who are beginners to lose in sometimes under 10 moves. And the first one we're going to go over is Caught Me Too. So let's go over some effective ways to avoid these traps so you can win more games and raise your elo. Alright, so the first one we're going to talk about is the fried liver attack. Now this is a pretty basic one. This happens quite a bit. Alright, and here is the basic setup. So this is the point where they're looking to come at you hard, okay? So normally these are the moves that a player would make, okay? F6, they bring your knight out, and then boom, the knight comes to G5. Now, what do you do in this situation? Okay, there are some things you can do to kind of mitigate, to kind of hold things off for a while, but they're not effective. So one move is moving your pawn up to D5. Now that blocks the bishop, but pawn can take. Now some players would say, okay, what I can do is I can bring my knight and I can take that pawn. That blocks the bishop, so there's nothing going on here. However, all they need to do is sack their knight. Okay, your queen and your rook are under attack now. You don't want that. So what's the only move? King takes knight, okay? But this is where it goes from bad to worse, guys, okay? Queen comes out, puts you into check. You gotta move your king. King moves. They take your knight. Their bishop is protected by the queen, so what do? There's not much you can do in this position. Basically, what you might have to do is bring your queen out, trade queens, and now you're in this position. If you look at this, you have a ruined pawn structure. You only have one piece out. This is not a good situation to be in. So let's go back and see what we can do here. In this position, this is where you want to use an effective means of avoiding this fried liver attack. Now, what I used to play was simply H6. Moving the pawn up, so that prevents the knight from coming in. Okay, you know, that's not a bad move, you know, that'll prevent that. However, let's be more efficient. Okay? Bring your bishop out. Not only are you preventing this knight from coming into G5 because your queen is protecting that square. So now they can't move their knight here. But instead of moving your pawn, you move your bishop out. What is this doing? Well, you're developing a piece. Now you've got another piece in the action. They can't continue with their line. You're golden. From this point on now, you just play the game. Alright, moving on to number 2, the Scholar's Mate. And here is basic position that happens when they're coming after you for a Scholar's Mate. Now, I've done this in the past, and perhaps some of you have as well. You know, you play chess for a little bit, you get a little bit of information, you get a little bit of knowledge about what to do, some certain tactics, and you think to yourself, well, what if I put my knight here and attack the queen? And not only that, my next move, I can come over here, take this pawn, and fork the king and the rook. We all have these kind of ideas, which is great. You're kind of seeing more and more of the board, more ideas on what to do. However, you miss the fact that the queen can come down. Boom. Checkmate. So how do we avoid this? Well, let's go back. This is the position we were in. A very, very simple thing to do to avoid this trap. And in the last trap that we talked about, Instead of just pushing a pawn somewhere, let's develop a piece. So if we bring our knight to f6, so we basically shut that whole Scholar's Mate down. Now, the queen cannot come here for a side attack because our knight is now protecting that. So you see, this is a simple, effective way to get out of the Scholar's Mate if you see it coming, and also you develop a piece. They've got 2 pieces on the board, you've got 2 pieces on the board. So you're not falling behind in development, you're doing a great job here. And from this point on, again, you just continue to play the game. Get your pieces out as fast as you can, get your king castled, and you're ready to go. Alright, for our final trap for black, the Legal's Mate. So the setup is like this. So this is the position. Okay, now the number one move that happens at this point from white is to h3, trying to kick out your bishop. A lot of times, just bringing the bishop back fails, because check this out. The knight comes to e5. Now at this point you may be thinking, they just made a huge blunder. Look at this, I can take the queen. Yes! Not so fast, my friends, not so fast, because bishop to f7, putting the king into check. So now you have to move your king. You move it up 1 square. That's the only square you can move it. And then here comes the other knight. And you are done. So how can we avoid this? Let's go back a few steps. Right to here. So when you brought your bishop out to pin the knight to the queen. Okay, at this point, when they bring their pawn up, probably the best move would be to take the knight. They'll probably take back with the queen. And now, notice what you've got going on here. You've got the bishop eyeing up the f7 square, and the queen also eyeing up the f7 square. So you've really got to be careful, because you'd be in a lot of trouble if the queen comes down here or the bishop comes down here and attacks your king. So what can we do in this position? Well, don't fall. Don't fall for the knight to d4 because it's just going to be a lot of problems if you do that. So instead of that, one of the best moves you can do is to bring your knight to f6. That'll eliminate the threat of what was going on there with the queen and the bishop, and then you can move on. Another thing you can do is you can bring your queen up either to d7 or to f6. Okay, now if there's a queen trade, that's not a problem. Your knight comes up, takes the queen, and now you're in a good position to continue on with the game. Now, at this point, if they make some random move, let's just say to protect this pawn because, you know, you were kind of eyeing up the pawn, it was protected. Now you can make that move. Now you can bring your knight up to d4, and now you have this fork idea. So they're going to have to do one of a couple of things. They're either going to have to move their bishop to protect this pawn, and in that case, if you chose, you can take that. That's up to you. If that's the style of playing that you like, you can do that. Or they're going to have to move their king to protect this pawn. So now they've lost castling rights, and you're still in a good position. This knight is in a very, very good position on the board. It's doing a lot of threatening. It's a great place to be. So those are just a couple ideas for the Legal's Mate. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed all the other mating traps and how to avoid them. Guys, this is such a fun game. Get out there and spill some blood on the 64 squares. We'll see you again.